I welcome you to News Once Was, a journey to the past to discover the forgotten lives of those eternally trapped in ink and shackled to the dusty pages of newspaper print. Thursday, July 18th, 1811, in Liverpool. Caution, whereas my wife, Anne Lolly, having behaved herself very imprudently and unbecoming a wife or mother, induces me to caution the public from any debt she may contract, as I will not be accountable after this notice. William Martin Lolly. Friday, 20th of September, 1811. An inquest was held on the body of Susanna Myers, who was killed in Parliament Street by the fall of a large iron boiler cover. Verdict: accidental death. Friday, 6th September, 1811. A dreadful mistake. A friend of ours in Dublin has communicated to us the following account of a shocking catastrophe which took place in Newry on Sunday. A most melancholy accident has just happened in this town. In the family of a Mr. McGowan, a daughter-in-law, 2 daughters and a grandson, the 3 first from 19 to 23 years of age, and the latter about 9 or 10, have all been poisoned by eating a species of fungus which they mistook for mushrooms. They partook of them on the Sunday night last. The boy died yesterday, Thursday, and the remaining 3 this morning, Friday. I have just been at the house and saw their 4 lifeless forms laid out. An awful spectacle, truly. They are all to be buried together tomorrow. The daughter-in-law lost her husband 5 weeks ago. He was going to London on business, and when within a few miles from thence, he fell from the roof of the coach and expired in a few hours afterwards. 24th of August, 1811, from the Irish papers. Friday, 6th of September, 1811. New manufactory. Arrival to the needle and pin manufacturers has just started forth in the person of Sarah Houghton, a young woman, 20 years of age, residing near Lichfield, who, in the course of a few months, according to the testimony of several medical gentlemen, has emitted from various parts of her body upwards of 200 pins and needles without having swallowed one to her knowledge. October 1811. Hitting the bullseye. A farmer's boy near Gosport was attacked by an enraged bull on a common, and finding no means of escape, threw himself flat on the ground. The bull tried to toss him, but could never catch hold of him with his horns. The boy firmly remained in the same position and drew from his pocket a knife, with which he usually eat his victuals, and taking a deliberate aim, thrust it into the animal's eye. The bull took to flight, and the boy escaped with only a few bruises. Friday, 13th of September, 1811. On Tuesday evening the 6th, the inhabitants of Grantham were agitated by a very extraordinary appearance in the heavens. About 7:30 o'clock, the eastern and western parts of the horizon seemed as 2 prodigious columns of fire issuing from immense volcanoes. The clouds were extremely disturbed, and the rack riding in the opposite directions portended an elementary war. The vane and steeple of the church were illuminated, and the effect produced upon the houses in the town, principally of brick, is scarcely to be described. They reflected a strong fiery red, and appeared as if viewed through one of Claude Lorraine's glasses of that colour. During the time of this curious appearance, which was nearly half an hour, the air was particularly close and warm. A considerable degree of anxiety was depicted upon the countenances of all who viewed the phenomenon, and in the impression of religious awe which the mind received, the beautiful idea of the royal psalmists was strongly enforced, wherein he describes the Supreme as riding on the wings of the wind and directing the storm. Friday, 11th of October, 1811. A curious circumstances occurred in the neighbourhood of Winchester last Wednesday, near the junction of the Old and New River. The attention of a gentleman bathing was drawn to a part of the stream by a vast fluctuation of the water, together with a faint noise, as if it were an animal. When he came to the spot, he distinctly perceived a close combat between a young otter and an enormous pike. It appeared that the animal had seized the fish on the back part of its head, and its immense tail caused the irregular motion and noise of the water by the strong exertion of this vertebral power, which naturalists inform us is prodigious. The fish relieved itself from the bite of the animal, and in return seized its opponent by the throat, which drew from the ambitious creature a faint but shrill moaning, when suddenly the mother appeared and put an end to the contest by bearing triumphantly away to its retreat this fresh water shark. Friday, 13th of September, 1811. Bull baiting. Tuesday, a concourse of people assembled at the Fives Court, Lawrence Street, in Birmingham, to enjoy the detestable diversion of baiting a bull, when the enraged animal, breaking loose, an infant 3 months old, was killed on the spot, and 2 women and 2 lads dreadfully trampled on and bruised. The latter are not expected to recover. Friday, the 13th of September, 1811. A black business. The rage for duelling has now descended from high life to the respectable fraternity of sweeps. 2 of these dusky heroes, armed with pistols, proceeded to Tottlefields a few days ago to settle an affair of honour in a polite way, accompanied by their 2 gentlemen of their own persuasion as seconds. On their arrival on the ground, all the necessary ceremonies were observed, and the due distance having been marked out, no doubt the matter would have concluded in the usual way, namely without the loss of blood on either side, but for the occurrence of an unforeseen accident. One of the party, having borrowed his weapon from a friend, who is an old iron dealer, forgot to ascertain whether it was foolproof or not, and having loaded it with an unusual charge, with a view to confound his antagonist by the loudness of the report, it unfortunately burst at the first discharge, and so dreadfully shattered his arm that he was for the moment deprived of all sense of existence. There being no surgeon on the ground, he was conveyed to the hospital, where it has since been found necessary to amputate the fractured limb. The opponent on this occasion was so alarmed at the tragical scene, he is thought proper to abscond. Friday, the 13th of September, 1811. A horrid account is given in a letter from Newfoundland of the arrival of a small vessel from Ireland, which had on board originally 209 people, but which number by starvation was reduced by less than 40 in the course of the passage. The tongues of the unfortunate people actually burst before they died. The captain will be punished. Friday, the 13th of December, 1811. A species of sea turtle, weighing 840 pounds, was harpooned and caught on the 27th of September off Sandy Hook near New York. It measured 3 feet 2 inches around the neck, was 7 feet long, 8 feet in circumference, and 7.5 feet from the extremity of one fin to the other, of a coal black color, with 5 ridges on the back resembling the sturgeon. It is said to be a trunk turtle, a native of the East Indies, and was the first ever seen in the American seas. The proprietor of a museum purchased it for $50. Friday, the 13th of December, 1811. A remarkable phenomenon. There is at present a willow tree of considerable height and about 3 yards in circumference, growing on the banks of a rivulet on a farm called Gubsill, the property of the Reverend Mr. Wozni, near Skipton, which unusually appears animated. It will at times prostrate itself fully along the length on the ground, and then rise to its original perpendicular position. Incredible as this may appear, it is a fact, and has been the astonishment of hundreds who have seen it. Friday, the 13th of December, 1811. The following very melancholy accident happened lately at Newcastle, as 2 master joiners of the name of Redhope and Wilson were sitting together in the Grey Horse public house on the quayside. The wife of the former came in and in very intemperate language upbraided her husband for sitting there. This conduct produced such a violent effect upon his mind that he rushed out of the house with an intent to throw himself over the quay, which, being suspected by his wife and Wilson, they both followed to prevent it. But so great was the hurry that they all 3 fell in together. Wilson and Redhope's wife were both saved, but Redhope himself was unfortunately drowned. His body was found soon afterwards in the mud. Friday, the 13th of December, 1811. About 3 weeks since, a house at Christchurch, Hants, was set on fire by water, in the following manner. On the premises of Mr. Belbin, a mason, a quantity of unslacked lime was laid, with some bundles of laths on it. The tide came up unusually high, and inundating the lower part of the house, kindled the lime, which set fire to the laths, and communicating with the buildings, burnt the whole to the ground with the part of the adjoining house. Friday, the 13th of December, 1811. Murder. A cruel murder has been perpetrated at Fowey in the Isle of Wight, and the verdict of a coroner's jury has attached the crime to William Wyatt, innkeeper at Fowey. The deceased was named Israel Fulak Valentine, a young man of the Jewish persuasion, and he was found drowned near the quay, with his jawbone broken, head fractured, and pockets turned inside out. It seems Wyatt invited him to Fowey on pretense of disposing of guineas. He was proved to have been walking with the deceased on the fatal quay, and the poor man was heard to cry, "Oh, Mr. Wyatt," in a tone of agony. A friend to the murdered Jew, having inquired for him, he unguardedly said, "What, have you not heard that he is drowned?" On searching his premises, the sum of £260 in notes was found concealed in a dunghill near the stable door. As these strong facts, he has been committed for trial. Friday, the 13th of December, 1811, from the American papers. On the 24th of August, in Bristol, on the west side of Canandaigua Lake, Daniel Wilder killed 25 rattlesnakes within 4 feet square of ground, and one of them has 2 heads and no eyes, which is preserved in spirits. Thursday, the 17th of November, 1812. Grand matrimonial blow-up. At the wedding of Mr. Thomas Paul and Miss Sarah Waite of Burgh in the Marsh, Mrs. Paul the elder had prepared for dinner a roast goose, in the body of which she had put for stuffing 2 penny loaves whole, and, in her hurry on the joyous occasion, had added 2 ounces of gunpowder, which she mistook for black pepper. The party were assembled around the comfortable blazing fire before dinner, enjoying by anticipation the parts they were to play in the knife and fork demolition of the hissing goose, when Mrs. Paul took the poker to stir the fire. Scarcely had she touched it when, raising the sparks, one of them kindled the combustible stuffing, and by the explosion of the powder, the goose was split into several pieces. The explosion was very loud, and the flying grease and limbs of the goose put the whole assembly to the rout in the utmost confusion. None were killed in the affray, but several suits of whites which the ladies wore were quite spoiled, and what was to have been the principal dish on the table was wanting at the feast. Friday, the 19th of July, 1811. A correspondent informs us that the common people in and about Maidstone are in great consternation in consequence of the recent birth of a child who, the moment it was born, as they confidently report, uttered these words: "There will be a prodigious crop of everything this year, but few people will live to enjoy it," and died immediately after. Considering the nature of the prophecy, it seems to have been a very wise child to retire at once without exposing itself to any further inconvenience. Friday, the 19th of July, 1811. On Monday last, a boy fell from the summit of the rock at St. James's Stone Quarry and was killed on the spot. It is said that he was in the act of taking a bird's nest when the fatal accident happened. Parents should caution their children to avoid playing near this dangerous spot, and we hope they will not lose the opportunity of pointing out the enormity of the cruel and thoughtless custom of taking nests. Friday, July 19th, 1811. Extraordinary occurrence. For several days, a lad 9 years of age, belonging to a respectable tradesman in the neighbourhood of Paddington, has been missing. He was at school near that place and not returning home at his usual hour. A search and inquiry was made for him. No findings were heard until last Tuesday morning, when he was found dead in one of the vaults in St. George's Chapel in Paddington. The body was standing against the wall of the vault. His bag with his school books was on his shoulder. There were several coffins in the vault. It is conjectured that the boy had been led there by curiosity to see a funeral, and that having been inadvertently shut in, he died of fright. Friday, 19th of July, 1811. A few days ago, suddenly, at Norwich, Miss Sillet, this young lady, was so near matrimony and death that her wedding clothes and shroud were brought home on the same day. Friday, 19th of July, 1811. Geoffrey the sailor. It appears that Robert Geoffrey, who was so inhumanely left to perish on the uninhabited island of Sombrero, has suffered so materially from his cruel treatment as to be rendered incapable in future of following his business of a blacksmith. It appears also that the monster who sentenced him to the almost certain chance of perishing with hunger has compromised with his victim, who, in consideration of £600, has dropped the prosecution. We have read of a law in Poland which imposes a fine of 15 francs on a gentleman who kills a peasant. It seems that Captain Lake sets a higher value upon a sailor's life. Friday, 20th of December, 1811. The wags of Paris say that the ladies there show every part of their persons, but their faces. While those beauties that used to be covered are displayed, the face is hid by a veil. We suppose that these elegants show so much that they are ashamed to show their faces. Friday, the 20th of December, 1811. A female pirate. A new character has appeared upon the seas, which is likely to excite as much interest as any other monster that has appeared. This is no less than a female pirate who has been very lucky in her profession and has deposited lately in a bank in New York for safety a large quantity of money, the result of her professional efforts. She commands a French privateer on our coasts, is masculine, tall, and stout, and is not deterred from the dangerous trade by the fate of her husband, who lost his life in it. From the American papers. Friday, 2nd of August, 1811. Gluttony. On Friday evening, a man of the name of Stephen Medley, known by the name of Long Stevie, a labourer at a manufactory in the neighbourhood of Spitalfields, undertook for a trifling wager at a public house in that quarter to eat 3 pounds of fat bacon, 3 quarts of beans, and a 3-penny loaf, and to drink 3 pots of porter, all in 1 hour. He commenced with great eagerness at 8 o'clock, and devoured the whole 10 minutes sooner than the given time, declaring it was the best bean feast he had ever had. Several bets were depending upon the occasion. Friday, the 2nd of August, 1811. There is now living in Sussex County, State of Delaware, a native African who is 124 years of age. His strength at 70 was unimpaired and exceeded the strength of much younger men. All his teeth are sound and in their number. His vision is as correct as it was in early life. His hearing is somewhat impaired. Also, his memory as to persons, but to events and situations, it is still in a sound state. He has had 3 wives and 31 children. The account of this extraordinary instance of longevity was communicated to a gentleman of the city of Boston by Dr. Gibbons of Sussex, by whom the facts herein mentioned were obtained from the venerable subjects of them himself, and confirmed by several of his neighbours. Friday, the 2nd of August, 1811. Lately, at Boroughbridge, Yorkshire, aged 83, Francis Bolton, pauper of that place, one of the most eccentric characters perhaps ever known. His constant custom from his infancy was to throw large quantities of cold water upon his head. The manner he performed this was very singular. In the most inclement weather, he would go to some neighbouring pump and fill his hat with water, and, having drunk as much as he thought proper, he would put his hat on, and the contents would run down his body. His shirt, when washed, he would put on wet, and for the last 20 years of his life refused to lay on a bed, as a substitute for which he used wet straw, on which he used to lay quite naked, without any covering but the clothes he put off, and during the winter season has many times been found frozen to the ground. When able, he travelled the country as a beggar, and his constant address was, "Please to give anything." Friday, the 22nd of November, 1811. John Paul, a butcher of Whitechapel, charged his 2 sons before the Lord Mayor on Thursday with threatening their father's life. Mr. P. gave his lordship an account of his sons' words and actions, the eldest of whom appeared not to exceed 17 years of age. A year ago he behaved so ill that he had then threatened to send him to sea, to prevent which he chopped off his own thumb. The younger one, following the example of his brother in threatening his life, the father was under the necessity of threatening to send him on board the tender, when he, with oaths, said he would prevent that, and chopped off his own thumb last Monday. The Lord Mayor reprimanded the boys for their undutiful conduct, and committed them to different counters to answer the complaints at the sessions. Friday, the 22nd of November, 1811. Last week, as 2 children of Lance Parnsaint, Carmarthen, were playing in a shed, the elder, about 6 years old, had tied the tail of a cow around the neck of the younger, which frightened the animal, and in its struggle the child was strangled. Friday, the 26th of July, 1811. A Russian peasant of the name of Alexei Nekvary lately died in the village of Kamenka in the province of Ufa at the advanced age of 124. At 101, he lost his wife, aged 90, and 2 years after married another, by whom he had 2 daughters, whom he lived to see married and mothers. Friday, the 26th of July, 1811. Died. A few days ago, the wonderful Mrs. Anne Moore, the fasting woman of Tetbury in Staffordshire, who existed 4 years without eating and nearly 3 years without drinking even so much as a glass of water. She was 50 years of age. Many thousands visited this surprising woman, and the learned faculty are completely baffled in all their opinions concerning the possible duration of life without food. By this instance of continued existence of animation, independent of sustenance. Friday, the 27th of September, 1811. Caution. Whereas my wife, Anne Newhouse, has absented herself from me, and otherwise conducted herself very improperly for some time past. This is to give notice that I shall not be accountable for any debts she may contract. William Newhouse, number 10, Cumberland Street, September the 20th, 1811. Friday, the 27th of September, 1811. A few days since, a poor cottager's wife, whilst leasing in a stubble between Amersham and Chesham, left her infant child, something more than a month old, sleeping under a hedge in the field. On her seeking it, the babe was gone, to the inexpressible grief of the mother. It was supposed that some animal had destroyed the child, and a bait of horseflesh having been laid at the spot where the child had been lost, was devoured by 2 badgers. The lurking place of the badgers was discovered in an adjacent wood, but no trace was found of the remains of the lost child. Friday, 27th of September, 1811. On Monday last, Mr. James Wilkie had been looking after some shearers who were at work in a field near Bonington, and, having incautiously gone into a field where a young bull was grazing, the animal ran at him furiously and struck him on the breast. When attempting to seize him by the horns, there being no means by which he could possibly escape, he was thrown down, trampled upon, and tossed about for some time, when the bull was joined by 2 bullocks, which were feeding along with him. And such was the fury of the animals, that although this melancholy scene took place within view of the whole field of shearers, it was quite impossible to render him the slightest assistance. When Mr. Wilkie was taken up, he was actually still alive, with his breast, back, and almost every bone in his body broke. He was able to speak a little and drank some water, but expired 2 hours afterwards. Friday, the 27th of December, 1811. Intolerance. The Reverend Lewis Powell is fined in the penalty of £20 for preaching in an unlicensed house at Land Roost, Denbighshire, by R.H. Humphreys, Esquire of Rins Lavern, a magistrate. Mr. Powell received his clerical education under the Reverend Mr. Lewis at his Protestant Dissenting Academy in Wrexham, and is an useful, honest man, but not able to pay the fine, and therefore must go to jail. From the Cumbrian. Friday, 27th of September, 1811. Two shipwrights belonging to the dockyard at Plymouth, being at work on board an old Spanish sloop of war, which is fitting for a receiving hulk, in cutting away a piece of ceiling plank, they found a bag of doubloons concealed, to the value of upwards of £500. Friday, the 27th of December, 1811. A coroner's inquest was held on the 16th on the body of Richard Taylor, London Road, a boy 2 years and 11 months old, who was scalded to death. Verdict: accidental. Friday, the 27th of December, 1811. A gentleman at Eastbourne has, within the last half year, lost 3 apparently fine horses, purchased for 120 guineas. On the animals being opened, their livers were found nearly consumed from the quantity of spice which had been given them by the jockeys to make them spirited and resemble blood horses. Friday, the 29th of November, 1811. To the editors of the Liverpool Mercury: Gentlemen, the public will be much obliged if any intelligent reader of the Mercury will inform them who has a right to the foot pavement on any turnpike road. 2 butchers were riding a race, one on the foot pavement, on the Prescott Road at 9:30 on Thursday evening last, and knocked 2 gentlemen into a ditch, one of whom is severely bruised. Yours, pro bono publico, 26th of November, 1811. Friday, the 29th of November, 1811. At Morristown, America, Miss Lavinia Rulestone, aged 20. The death of Miss Rulestone affords an interesting caution to the ladies. She had been in the habit of wearing those death inviters, fashionably called corselets, braced with steel. These, having attracted the lightning, were scattered in all directions, mangling her body in a shocking manner. Friday, the 16th of August, 1811. 2 ladies lately fought a duel on Otter. One was armed with a pistol, the other with a sword. A child in a cradle fell a victim to the bad aim of the former. Friday, the 23rd of August, 1811. The late Mr. Fransham of Norwich, who was sometime tutor to Mr. Wyndham, and a man of great mathematical powers, was so apprehensive of being buried alive that repeatedly and earnestly before his decease He requested that his body should be laid before a fire, that wine should be offered to his lips, and that the arm of a young woman clasped around his neck before he was given up as irrecoverable. Friday, the 23rd of August, 1811. There is now alive at Lisson Green, Paddington, and daily worked in a small cart, a jackass, 40 years of age, the property of Joseph Lilly. Friday, 30th of August, 1811. The following paragraph is copied from a Norfolk paper. A poor girl, about 17 years of age, pregnant and very near her time, left her service to go to her friends at some distance from Norwich. Finding herself in labour, she applied at several places on the road and was refused accommodation, through the fear of her becoming burthensome to the parties. At length, she delivered herself in a cornfield where, shocking to relate, she remained from the Saturday till the Wednesday following, with the infant wrapped in her undercoat, and which she used every means in her power to keep alive, herself subsisting entirely upon the ears of corn which she could pick up. The unfortunate creature then endeavoured to crawl home with the child and reach the place with the assistance of some person who met her on the road. The infant died some days after, and the unhappy mother, by kind treatment, is likely to survive. Friday, the 30th of August, 1811. On Wednesday night, a tiger belonging to Mr. Mills, who exhibits wild beasts at the different fairs, and whose caravan was put up at the Swan Inn, Holborn Bridge, London, previous to it going to Peckham Fair, got out by breaking some of the bars of his cage, and escaped into the yard, where he jumped with his forepaws on the shoulders of one of the porters at work. Fortunately, the keeper was in the yard. He desired the man not to be alarmed, and with a small stick in his hand, commanded the tiger to lie down, which he immediately did. A young hen, being frightened, flew into the animal's cage, when he followed and was properly secured without doing any injury. Please feel free to like and subscribe.